For asking me and inviting me, Neil. Just such a amazing honor for a total loser like me to ever be asked anywhere to do anything at all. Much less actually fly somewhere and speak somewhere. And thanks Corey and Jeremy. Jeremy was picked me up from the airport. Just Johnny on the spot, man, all yesterday and today, and I appreciate it. And just everyone has been so kind. Everyone has been so welcoming. This is just like, what I like to call a pocket of enthusiasm. It's just people who are serious about their sobriety. And there's this saying that, like, it's not fake it till you make it, it's act better than you feel. And what happens is I begin to take the actions of acting better than I feel. Because how I feel is a lie pretty much most of the time anyway, My feeling's going to change in 10 seconds. So why would I, take an action on every feeling I have, which I've been, doing my whole life at everyone else's expense but my own, So when my sponsor told me that, I felt like it was a very insincere way to be, and I couldn't believe my sponsor was asking me to lie to you guys, But the truth is, like the big book says, I manufacture misery everywhere I go. I just make it up, So why don't we flip it around and we make up a little joy, a little enthusiasm, start acting a little better, and then what happens is I feel better. And it's the damnedest thing about this program of Alcoholics Anonymous is we just cannot think our way into good living, but I try so hard to think my way into good living. Because I have a thinker, man, and I swear to you that when I was new and in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd look around the room and I'd think, I am so much smarter than all of you. It's not even close. And we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, good to be here. Thank you guys, everyone. Everyone's so welcoming and so fun to be around. I'm just having such a great time. And I'm not just saying that, okay? Truly, I want to come back. I love Provo. I've never been here before. I've been to Salt Lake and a few other places, but I've never been to Provo. I'm really enjoying myself. Like, this is a place I can come hang out, It's awesome. You guys are good AA. Let's see, what else was I going to say before I started actually telling my story? Food was great. That was awesome. Thank you guys so much, all the volunteers that cooked and everything else. That was amazing. That was awesome. I'm nice and full, ready for a nap. So I have two loving parents. I grew up in a few different places, born in Dallas and Tacoma, Washington, Salem, Oregon, Eugene, Oregon. Moved around a lot, kind of settled in Eugene, Oregon, and they were, my parents are not alcoholic. There was lots of alcoholism in my family, so my mother would warn me at times. She said one time I remember her saying, listen, you got, kind of see how you are, and you got an uncle who, is a crackhead, and your other uncle died of alcoholism, and your grandfather's an alcoholic, and so you're probably going to be an alcoholic. And by the way, masturbating is okay. That's what she said to me, and I'm like, Jesus, Mom, I mean, good God. Don't feel shamed about masturbating, and you're going to be an alcoholic. I'm like, that's an overshare, Mom. I never felt really good about telling my mom secrets, and she felt really good about telling me whatever was on her mind, still does. So I lived in Eugene. I got in. We moved there. I was the new kid in school. It was 7th grade. I was, freshly popping pimples and, finding hair in new and fun places every day, and I was listening to rap music, getting out of myself a little bit. Easy, NWA, 2 Live Crew, Ghetto Boys, Too Short. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I listened to. And so when I finally got a couple buddies and they wanted to sit down and have a drink with me one night and they asked me what I wanted, I told them a 40 ounce of Old English 800 because I'm actually a black man inside. And so that's what I wanted. And from Compton. Living in Eugene temporarily while I wait to start my gang life. Mostly I just blame the rap music for my alcoholism, I think that's fair. And I got that 40 ouncer of Old English 800 and I drank it and I felt like $1,000,000. I mean, I remember walking down the school hallway, and I was just so self-conscious of how I looked and how I walked and how I was perceived, and what are you thinking about me, and how can I be cool, and what are they thinking, and what are they talking about? And it's just like, just insanity. And I wasn't like that until till 7th grade. I mean, I was just a happy-go-lucky, kid up until that point. So it was driving me nuts, and then I had this drink, and I just imagined that, if I was there and walking around that day, I'd look around and I'd just think, who's going to be the lucky lady? I just went from being the pimply-faced geezer to I could have any girl, I could dance, any move, I could fight like Mike Tyson, and I felt like $1,000,000, and it was like my perception of reality had shifted completely, and it was the same the next day. No major consequences, stumbled in drunk through the front door. We all got busted, but, again, it's just kids drinking, and, nothing really bad happened. I drank that 40 ounce, 140. Now, my other buddy, Ron, he drank his halfway, puked all over the place, and then finished it. He's got 17 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous today. And the other guy, Hans, he drank half his, he put the cap on it, he saved it for later. We don't hang out with that guy. You know what I mean? We don't hang out with that guy. Something wrong with that guy. But I just knew, I just at that point, and I have a different reaction to alcohol than a normal person. And my mother, normal or abnormal, she's a normal drinker. And what normal drinkers do is they take a drink, and she would have a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, and then she always seemed to want a second one after having the first one. And halfway through that, she'd start to feel it, and that's when she stopped. She did not want to feel out of control. She didn't like that feeling. It wasn't something that she wanted to do. She liked the feeling of being sober and sober-minded. And I'm just the opposite, After 3 beers or 3 drinks or 3 shots or whatever, and I start to feel a little bit in control, By the time I have 6 or 7 or 8, I'm ready to go for a drive, By the time I have 12, I'm ready to kick some ass. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to start a fight. And just when I shouldn't be fighting, that's when I want to start fighting. Just when I'm not as fast, I'm not as, that's how it goes for me. But I mean, that's how it is. It's a complete opposite thing. And what happens is I have an allergy to alcohol. If you're new, don't worry about it. Basically what it means is that if you were to invite me over to share a 6-pack or a half rack even, or a bottle of wine, which happened from time to time, or hey, I got a 40 ounce, or you want to come over and drink it? It's like I'm probably just going to say no and look for an opportunity where there's going to be a little more alcohol, because somehow deep down I know that no matter what the plan is, everything's out the window as soon as alcohol hits my bloodstream. I have something wrong with my brain and my body where when alcohol hits, all bets are off. And I can't control the amount that I take after that first drink. There may be a time or two where maybe I pulled something off and it wasn't too bad, but I can tell you that for the most part, I have not been able to control the amount of alcohol that I drink after I put alcohol in my body. And that's what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're new, that's the program. That's what we read for the most part. There's other things we read too, but that's the main thing. And that's what it's talking about. It's talking about the allergy of alcohol, and that's one of the 2 components that you need to qualify as an alcoholic if you have that. And I have a guy in my home group that's, here's his deal. He was a very successful guy right up until he stumbled in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He got a DUI 20 years ago or whatever. He didn't come in, out of prison or anything. He was doing just fine. And he's just like that kind of drinker that can still hold a job down, unlike me. But he's an alcoholic too. But he was sometimes able to plan out his drinking. He was sometimes able to have, 3 or 4 drinks and go home. What he would share, and I'm just trying to say this because not everyone drinks exactly like me. So listen to the similarities and not the differences. What he would say is that he never knew when it was going to go bad on him. That part of it he couldn't control. And that's part of it too. There's just times when he had a plan and the plan didn't work out. And that's alcoholism, And I would drink every chance I got. I've never consciously said I'm an alcoholic or that I'm going to drink every chance. But subconsciously, because of the difference that it made me feel compared to when I was sober, I was going to drink every chance that I got. And I loved it. I mean, I loved Old English 800, and it is disgusting. And I loved it, you know. I just loved it. And I got to drink at St. Ides, and I love St. Ides. It's even more disgusting. I started drinking Milwaukee's. That is gross beer, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Hams, and I loved it, you know. I didn't even know what I didn't know, and then I started drinking better beers, and I'm like, that stuff is nasty. Why did I even drink it, you know? But I drank for the effect, but I never turned down a drink. I always loved to drink, whatever it was you put in front of me. I just loved any alcohol going in my body because I knew what it was going to do for me. And I started stealing stuff. I had a couple buddies, and we started, taking stuff out of cars to pay for alcohol, and we got in trouble. One of the guys, he wasn't listening to enough rap music, and he ratted us out. And I knew that you didn't do that from the music I was listening to, but this son of a bitch ratted us out. So, my mom and the cops come get me out of football practice, and I spent my freshman year, every weekend of my freshman year in Skipworth Juvenile Detention Center. So I'd check in after the football game on Friday. I'd get out Sunday night, which was nice of them, to do it that way so I could still go to school and play football. And then my sophomore year, I got arrested in school for a bunch of stuff, falsifying government documents, breaking into a DMV. Basically, I was just making fake IDs because I was getting sick of buying all my friends' alcohol. I went to the Asian liquor store. I signed their paperwork. I was 21. I was in there like every other night buying a bunch of 4 packs of wine coolers at Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill. And it was like just screams, underage drinking, The Asians didn't care. They were like barely speak English. They were making money. Everybody was happy. But I was like, I'm like, y'all need to get a shopping cart in here. I can't be carrying all this alcohol, I'd clean them out all the time. I mean, I had the whole school, Sheldon High School. And I was the guy buying all the alcohol, but I got sick of that, so we busted into a DMV and stole a bunch of stuff to make fake IDs, and I was selling them at school. And then that turned bad, so back to Skipworth, and still had my football though, still had my sports, still had all the sports that I play, and that was kind of what kept me in the game. It's what kept my grades up. It's what kept me from just really going off the deep end. And we had my parents didn't think that I wasn't going off the deep end, so after my sophomore year after my junior year before my senior year of high school, they took me to treatment to, obviously I had like 7 or 8 felonies, and something was amiss, and with Andrew. And so they took me to treatment. I looked at treatment, and I looked at it like it was going to be going back to jail, and so I ran away from home, like right out the door, lost my fake ID and everything, ran out and went to go stay with my buddy Troy, who lived in Coburg, and Troy's dad was an alcoholic. We knew he was an alcoholic, he had the big distended belly and big nose. He was an alcoholic. Who's who I compared myself against when I thought about my drinking as him, abusive son of a bitch that he was, beat his kids. But we drank his whiskey nonetheless. And in the morning, we were drinking Canadian Mist, finishing off a half gallon for breakfast. Summer, summer break. You can do that sort of thing when you're 17 or 18, 17. And we just had a wild idea, Troy and I, we looked at each other and we're like, let's go ride horses. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So let's call Eric. Eric will come pick us up, okay? He's sober. All right, we called Eric. Eric came and picked us up. Eric's like, are you guys just hammered at 11 o'clock in the morning? And we're like, no, we're fine. We'll get something to eat and then we'll go ride horses. So we went out to this farm out West 18th, and there was a couple horses there. And we'd never rode horses before. This is one of those drunk ideas that sound good. Like I said, is like I felt like a cowboy at the time. We were going to go ride horses, but we'd not ever ridden a horse. None of us. Anyway, there's horses there. We're drunk. We roll up. But then I look over here, and there's this tiger, this full-grown Bengal tiger in this cage, walking back and forth, So I had to go see if I was not hallucinating. I went up and put my hand up to the tiger cage. It started licking my hand. It had this sandpaper tongue, and I was like, yeah, that's a nice tiger, So I stuck my hand in the cage to pet it, and it went and chomped my thumb, put 2 teeth through my thumb, and started trying to pull me into the cage. I was pulling back. I had my feet on the cage. My buddy Eric, who's now a circuit court judge in Multnomah County, Oregon, came running up and was punching the tiger in the face as hard as he could. And he said the tiger just looked at him and smiled, and didn't let go. And eventually the end of my thumb popped off, and I fell back, and we went up and knocked on the people's house that lived there that none of us knew, by the way. And they weren't pleased at all to see this kid, bleeding all over their front porch. And I'm like, I got indignant, I'm like, it's your tiger that bit me, And she's like, who the hell are you, and why are you on my property, She goes and gives me a bowl to bleed in, so I'm bleeding in this bowl. And she goes, get the hell off my property. And by the way, don't tell anyone it was a tiger. It's already bit like 2 other people, and I don't want to get it taken away. So I go to the hospital. My mom works in the emergency room. This is normal, standard procedure. Mom sees us in there pretty regularly. And I roll in there bleeding in a bowl. She's like, oh, my God, what now? How much have you had to drink? And I tell her I had a couple drinks. Mom, I had 2, And I think that's just like in our alcoholic DNA, right? Don't we always just say 2? Every time. It's like, what the hell? Where do we even get that from, And I've been thinking about that lately. And I think it goes back to when we were in school, I think us little budding alcoholics in 7th grade in health class heard them say something about the legal drinking age and 2 drinks and .08. And I think we all just forgot all about algebra, but damn, we didn't remember .08, 2 drinks, legal limit. We take a test on that shit and we will pass it 100% of the time, And so that's what I told her, and she's like, yeah, whatever. You're full of it. The doctor comes in, and he's like, what happened? I'm like, a dog bit me. And he goes, a dog bit you. A dog did that to your thumb. And I'm like, yeah, sir, it was a dog, So I got a bunch of rabies shots. I don't know what kind of shots they give tiger bite victims, but I got rabies shots because it was supposedly a dog, right? There's the first point, and to them, and then animal control comes in after surgery, everything else. I'm recovering. They want to know about this dog. Day after that, they get me in the car. For 3 days, I drove around with animal control looking for this dog, okay? Because I listen to rap music, you know what I mean? And I'm not even going to snitch out a damn tiger, even though I probably should have. It's probably, mauled some people by now, but I held firm, and so I didn't rat anybody out, and that was right before daily doubles, right before football. Football is my thing. It's all I live for, that and drinking. I'm a running back. I'm so excited, and then this happens. I got a big cast on my hand. I can't be the team's running back, so I'm the cornerback, my senior year. So that was a serious, progressive kind of thing, not to mention the fact that I'm destroying my family, destroying my mother, destroying my father. They're worried sick about me all the time. Just the things that I'm doing to them and not giving a crap about them at all. The things we alcoholics do to our families, putting them through the late nights, staying up, worrying, not knowing what's going on, the trips to the hospital. It's just, there's no way that I can ever make amends for any of that. I try every day to make living amends to my mom and my dad, and I'm never going to make it right, but that's where I was at the time, and I was playing football, and it was still fun. It was still a senior year. It was a good time. Season got over, and we went out dancing at one of those teen nightclubs. Teen nightclubs are a bad idea. I think in general, across the board, they're a bad idea, especially for us. And I got into a fight. Couple girls, couple guys. They really wanted to kill my buddy for some reason. Knowing him, I know Dusty deserved it. They were beating the crap out of him, and I jumped in, and the cops came, but I was going now, and, I like to fight, and I like to, and once I start, I don't really stop either, you get all fired up when you're drunk, and you know how it is, and so the cops came, and now I'm fighting with the cops, and, and I'm not gentle. I'm a varsity football player for 3 years, and, it got ugly, and they didn't like it at all. Now I'm going to Lane County Correctional, Goodbye, Skipworth. We've graduated from you. Now we're going to Lane County Correctional. And that's where I spent a lot of time over the next 4 or 5 years was Lane County. And I just, I was just trying to have fun. That's it. I'm just trying to have a good time, I like drinking. I like hanging out with my friends. We party. I'm still having fun. The consequences aren't severe enough. I graduated, barely got this crappy job. And I would, smoke weed during the day and just to get through, till I could have a drink when I got off of work. And as I couldn't wait to get off work, 5 o'clock rolls around and my mouth is dry as a bone, It's like just cotton mouth from just smoking weed all day in this warehouse. And I go home and I was dating this girl and she always had a half rack there for me. I mean, what an angel, right? I don't know. The only reason I didn't marry her is because I'm an idiot, alcoholic. But that alone right there qualifies her for marriage. She had a half rack of Budweiser just waiting in the fridge every day when I got home. And I drank the first 3, and it was just like, God, I could feel it today. It makes my mouth water right now. I just pour it in a cold glass and drink that whole Budweiser all the way down. And if you're thinking about relapsing, don't, just describing how it felt, okay? You don't need to go out and get a drink. And I drink that second one, and oh my God. And the third one is just, finally, finally, everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be okay. And every night I'd say, we're not going out. We're not going out. We're just going to stay home and, just chill and drink and go to bed and get up and go to work, every night, get done with that half rack, and then it was, we're going out. And we're going out, sometimes we'd go out and it'd be okay. Other times we'd go out. I got arrested one night for inciting a riot. It was innocent enough in the beginning. It was this one guy, this Marine buddy of mine, was just telling me about this other guy across the room that had done something bad to a girl that we knew, and my friends just would set me off like that. So I walked up and hawked a big loogie and got down in his face and just spit it right in his face. You never seen a bunch of people get up so quick when that happened. I mean, it was just nuts. And I mean, it was brutal. The Marines were going in the hospital that night. It was like people were getting severely damaged permanently. When it was done, there was unconscious people all over the floor. It was nuts. I got arrested for inciting a riot, All I did was spit in a guy's face. You know what I mean? And I'm getting blamed. It's BS, Another time I got arrested for the same thing. And once you get arrested for one thing, they start sort of pinning it on you, My 21st birthday was fun. It was like a lot of buddies that wouldn't hang out with me anymore because of the inciting a riot thing, which was a regular occurrence with me because it was just, I want to have fun. You know what I mean? And I want everyone to have fun. We're all we're in this together. Everybody, even you, kid. I don't even know you, but let's go. And that's just how I was. And we all had a good time, I thought, but my friends didn't want to hang out with me anymore. So they obviously weren't having as good a time as I was having. But my 21st birthday, it was like, they all kind of came out for me because we're all, we got that deep bond, and they're like, all right, this is going to be bad, but we'll keep an eye on Andrew. We'll keep 2 guys on him at all times, all right? And, it was one of those, brownout nights where the next morning you, remember, bits and pieces of what happened. And all the bartenders were like, what, you're 21 today? They all know me because I've been going there for the last, 3 years, this is your 21st birthday, for real? And I'm like, yep, that's a legit ID there, son. Yeah, I've had you fooled for a while. But yeah, those brownouts, is one minute I was talking to the local sports guy, sports guy, and I was trying to sell him some real estate. I didn't even have a job, And then I had, I remember cruising down the alley going fast, and I was in the passenger seat, and I had the door open and had my hand just scraping against the concrete and scooped up my wallet. I remember that. And then I remember dragging a bartender over the, bar because he wouldn't serve me anymore. Just weird things, And I got up the next morning and I thought, wow, what a weird night. And It was, Normally I just black out. Shortly after that, this neighbor, and I lived in this neighborhood in Springfield, and I'm an alcoholic, okay? I think that we've made that clear. But my neighbor Lance liked to smoke and snort meth. And I lived in this meth neighborhood for some reason, I'm not sure why, but there was like 3 murders in my cul-de-sac that summer. One of them in my backyard, one of them in my front yard. And I don't know why I didn't move out, I know why. I was growing weed illegally in the house, that's why. And the murders really, I had the cops come one morning, they knocked on the door, and I'm like, oh, I'm busted again. They know I'm growing weed, whatever. They're like, sir, will you please evacuate? Someone's been killed in your backyard. I need you to evacuate the house. And I'm like, all right, officer, but you're not allowed to go in. You got to go around, use the gate, because it smelled like weed in my house, But he didn't care. Where was I going with that? Oh, yes, methamphetamine. My neighbor, he liked to do meth, and anyway, he got pissed off at this guy, Raj. This is on YouTube, Raj. And he had this, he was going to murder this guy because he slept with his ex-wife. It's like, who cares, Lance? It's frickin' your ex-wife. What do you care? But Lance is this 6'5" frickin' lunatic, and he wanted me to go get some meth from Raj. And so I did, and Lance is like, here, try a line. It's great. And so I'm like, all right, man, try a line of your meth, but I'm not a drug user. You disgust me. And then I snorted a little line of meth, and for the next 3 days, I told everyone I knew how great meth was. I mean, I was going to people's work, going to their place of business, and people that had graduated from college and had a career. One guy's a lawyer, and I'm like, hey, buddy, you got to try meth, And yeah, exactly, right? That's what I was telling them. Oh, my God. It's hot in here. So anyway, career was born, right? So I'm selling meth. Selling meth to whoever will buy it. And it was a good career move for me, though, seriously, because I wasn't doing anything else at the time. You know what I mean? Nothing. And this one guy would come pick me up, and he would, we'd go get something to drink. Usually we'd get a 5-liter box of wine. That was normal breakfast. I'd put it in what used to be now it was now an Nalgene, but it was that thing with the straw coming out of the top that you had back in the 90s. Remember that thing? Some of you? Yeah? Okay. No cell phones. Pay phones. Used the pay phones a lot. Had quarters and stuff and doing all that whole thing. And then usually get a burrito in there somewhere, And after I finish off the 5-liter box of wine that was $7.99 from Albertsons, I mean, that's bang for your buck right there. That's how I'm drinking, bang for your buck. And then we'd go, I'd usually get some beer, and then at night we'd go to the strip clubs. And this was I felt like I had become someone, because I walk into the strip club, and, before I was this guy that just people wanted to kick out of all bars, all strip clubs, everything. And now I'm like, hey, Mr. Ingram, please come on in. I had my seat, I had my place, I had everything, I was running those strip clubs, Strippers buy meth, okay? So if you need to sell some meth at some point in your life, just remember that one little business tip from Alaska. Anyway, this was in Oregon, but that's where I live now. Anyway, so I was, and that was great. That was fun. But I got my stupid dog it was like a Chow Newfoundland mix. It was this tall, all black, looked like a bear. So I named it Bear. Looked exactly like a black bear. And he would always get out and run away, and the pound would pick him up, and he'd be at the pound, and I'd have to go bail him out of the pound, and then I'd get a ticket for dog at large. And I got to the point with the courts where I just didn't go anymore, because the last time I went, I was on acid, and Chucky was talking to me, that little doll or whatever. And so I knew something was wrong with the court system, and I was hallucinating anyway, and I didn't go to court anymore. I was done with courts. And so I had a ticket for dog at large. I had a warrant out for that ticket, and I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. I don't remember what it was. One night I get arrested a lot, so it's hard to remember exactly what happened, but I had a lot of meth. and among other things, you know. A little bit of heroin, but I try to stay away from stuff that makes you, you know, shit and vomit at the same time. You know, it's not good for you. That's usually the first sign, but whatever. I know some of you are freaks. But anyway, I got arrested for that, you know, for a dog at large, and then you know how they search you, and it's just like boom, 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 boom. Oh, sir, and what's this digital scale you have here and all this other stuff? So anyway, I went to jail for you know 3 or 4 months. I don't remember how long it was, but it was pretty bad. And I got out and I went to treatment again. I tried to go to treatment again, and I gave up all drug dealing and all kind of stuff like that. I mean, it was bad. There was phones tapped and stuff going on. There's something else that happened before that, but due to YouTube, we're not going to talk about it. You know, another drug-related thing that was going on that I didn't want to have to. I'm just kidding, Neil. I'm good. I'm clean, man. Take me anywhere. I was recently interviewed by the Secret Service, by the way. So if I was going to get arrested, it would have been then. Whole nother story. Anyway, I was had to give up everything that I was doing, you know, and when I gave that up, it was like I just reverted back to being just a street bum, a street drunk, but one that was violent and had violent tendencies, and people didn't want me around. My family changed the locks on the house. My friends didn't want me around, and all the people that I'd been dealing meth to that loved seeing me come around without meth, they wanted zero to do with me, you know, real loyal people, those were. And I was, they wouldn't let me go back in this treatment center, and AA was a bunch of losers. I knew that. I'd been there plenty of times. They got nothing in there at all in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I had no idea the depth and weight and the quality of people in AA. I just looked at it like a bunch of losers sitting around waiting to die, like holding each other's hands for support so that they weren't going to drink that day. And by God, I knew 3 or 4 of them would, you know. They just looked nervous, and I was sure that, you know, that was like a life that I'd rather kill myself than live that life, you know. I was just going to check out and go out with a bang. And at that point, you know, and I'm not suicidal. I just didn't want to live that life. And I knew I needed to do something different. And I wandered in there, I was 6, 7, 8 months. I was homeless in the winter in Eugene on the streets in the rain and the snow. And I wandered into this treatment center one more time just thinking, well, maybe they'd take me back this one time, you know, and maybe, who knows. And I would go to AA meetings, and I was just a jerk, you know. Nobody in here has been like me, but I was tonight anyway. I'm sure you have plenty of those people here. But I was disruptive, and I'd talk during the meetings, and I'd leave before the Lord's Prayer, and I'd tell you that the God idea is, you know, ridiculous. And I mean, I was very vocal about how I felt about you and very disruptive in the meetings and not very pleasant at all in general, which is why no one wanted to be around me. And I wandered in there one night, and this old boy was there, and he said, you know, we can't let you in. You're not allowed in here anymore. He goes, but I'll tell you what, I just got this flyer for this thing in Alaska, this treatment center in Alaska. And there's horses and there's cows and there's, you know, you can learn how to be, you know, you can learn how to rustle or whatever you people do with that kind of stuff, you know. And I thought, that sounds nice. And then he said, there's this like Christmas pageant too that was on the flyer. And I don't know what it was about that kind of appealed to me, but kind of embarrassing to admit, but I thought, well, that sounds nice, you know. And and I'm like, all right. So I started talking to, you know, my lawyer and things like that, and I was able to, you know, cobble together enough money for a one-way ticket to Alaska and no extradition for all the felony warrants that I had out for me. And so I was kind of on the run, you know, at that point. And I don't know how I made it. The treatment center pulled my record, but I don't think they had filed all the charges yet. And I flew to Alaska, and I checked into this place called Nugent's Ranch. And turns out there's no horses, there's no cows. There's geese that bite you every time you go outside to have a cigarette. It's a pig farm, and it smells like it. There's chickens. But I was a wasted dude. I had just gotten done coming off of a seizure where my jaw locked shut, and I was throwing up in my mouth, and I couldn't move a single muscle. And my buddy looked at me and said, yeah, just think about it. You know, next time you drink or do any drugs, think about this. And I'm like, call 911. And he goes, no, you remember this. And he was just drunk. I mean, he wasn't trying to kill me, but I almost died, you know, and that's where I was at. He was just drunk, like thought I'd learn a lesson, you know, and I almost died. And And that's where I was at, physically, mentally, not to say anything about spiritually, but I was shot. I mean, I got in there, I had nothing left. Every time I would get sober, I'd lose feeling in both hands. I don't know what that was about, but I had nothing left. My nerves were fried. I mean, you just can't keep up that level of bodily abuse day after day, year after year, without some serious physical repercussions, And I was an absolute mess in that place. And I came to a number of days later, walked outside with my Marlboros and stood out in it was 20 below, the wind's blowing 50 miles an hour. And I'm like, what the did I get myself into, It's like the worst coming out of a blackout I ever had in my life, I couldn't believe it. My last drink was 2 22s of Alaskan Amber in SeaTac Airport, because I thought, I'm going to Alaska, I'll have a little Alaska Amber, why not? Blessing, though, after that I came to, and I found myself in a place that sent me to AA, basically. This guys from Alcoholics Anonymous would come in and they would share, and I would judge them mercilessly, much like I'm being judged tonight. I would sit in the back and just think, what an idiot. That's not true. He didn't do that. I could do that better. Why does he even say that? He sounds so stupid. Does he have a lisp? I mean, these are all the things that I would just be like thinking during the talk, And I was just like that at meetings too. But I got to tell you, these meetings I was going to in Alaska were a little different than the ones I'd been going to before, because people were fired up about recovery. Fired up. And I'd walk into those meetings not fired up, but also desperate as the dying I was, because I was, in Alaska for one, I'm not sure exactly how I got there. But I would walk into the meeting, and these guys would just circle up, Hey, I'm Andrew, or I'm Kurt, I'm Brad, I'm Ron, here's my phone number. Come sit down, come out here, get a seat. You make coffee, they're just like, they're kind of like, and it was like the first time a girl stuck her tongue in my ear. You know what I mean? It was like, you sort of instinctually pull away, but then you kind of ease back in. You're like, well, that's not so bad, That's kind of nice. And, and that's how I felt about AA. I was like, all right. This is very uncomfortable and weird, but I kind of like it, I mean, there's something here. And these guys were awesome, man. And I needed that, I'm a disruptive, loud, boisterous, person who thinks he knows everything, and I don't know a damn thing. And these guys would just tell me constantly during the meeting. They look at me and, and I was just thinking, I'm gonna rip your face off after this meeting. I'm gonna murder you. I'm gonna burn your house. I mean, I go from like having a good time to I'm gonna burn your house down. Okay, is that mature emotions? You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I come to Alcoholics Anonymous with, So if your house ever gets burned down, it's a newcomer that did it, you know what I mean? Look around the room. And that's how I come to AA, hate and lust. I'm just sitting in there, and that's what I did in treatment before. When I'd go to treatment, I'd just look, I'd get into I wouldn't call it a relationship, because that doesn't do any service to that word, but in treatment, I'd find a lady, every time. And it was like, I'm just trying to get out of my own damn head. And if I don't have any alcohol, I'm going to look for a woman, okay? Or anything, I'm going to look for a woman. I'm going to look for a book, a TV show. I don't care, man. When I'm sober, I want out of this head. I want out of it, and I'm going to do anything I can to get out of it. And I've never had a replacement. But something about these meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and these guys and their stories, and I can identify with what they were talking about and what they were saying. I could see that was me as well, the way that they drink. And then they started talking about how we have this, powerless over alcohol, our lives have become unmanageable, and you're insane. What does that mean? You need to be restored to sanity. What does that mean? You need to find a higher power. I don't believe in God, And why am I insane anyway? They go, well, I did some insane things. I guess they know. No, you're insane when you're sober. That's what the book tells me. I'm insane when I'm sober. Anybody, my mother even, could go, do the crazy stuff that I did. If you're drunk enough, you can do some crazy stuff, But it's the sober thinking that precedes that first drink in light of every other time that I've drank. It's obvious. I know what's going to happen, and I pick up a drink anyway. That's insanity, and that's what I was dealing with. But I wouldn't go to that second step. I wouldn't believe in a power greater than myself. I refused to believe in a power. I just lived that life for so long that there was no God that I had to stick to it till the bitter end, you know. And my sponsor said, well, listen, drool boy. So just to, you know, my name is Andrew, okay? Then it was Androol, because supposedly I drooled on the women in AA. And then it was just drool. And then it became drool boy. These are things you beat people up for, okay? But I just hung in there, man, with these nicknames. And it was humiliating, but I hung in there. But anyway, listen, drool boy. You're going to get on your knees and say, God, please help in the morning, and God, thanks for keeping you sober at night. And I'm like, well, I don't believe in God. I don't care. It's a spiritual program of action, okay? Can you get behind that? That's what we do. We take actions in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we get well as a result, and our thinking will clear up as a result of the actions that we're taking in AA. So can you do that? I go, yeah, fine. So I'm praying on my knees, God, please help. At night, God, thanks for keeping me sober today. Not believing a word of it. Maybe I was deep down, but consciously not believing a word of it. Looking over at my roommate, Benny, who I hated his guts, and I wanted to just beat the living crap out of him every time I saw him praying on his knees with his long, stupid prayers in his underwear. I wanted to murder him. And I made the mistake of telling my sponsor about it. And he said, oh, good, pray for Benny. Every morning and every night, here's your prayer. God, please grant Benny thy very best. Grant him everything that I want for myself. So, God, please grant Benny thy very best. Grant him everything that I want for myself. And then I'm thinking in my head, like, deeper down. And I'm like, you know what? Benny could die, and I'd be fine. You know? That's part of my prayer process. And Benny gets into a fight. A week and a half later, he gets kicked out of treatment, and I believe. You know, I believe there is a higher power. I am convinced now of a higher power. That is step 2, folks. If you're new, that's step 2 right there. God either is or he isn't. What was your choice to be, you know? And that convinced me. That was like a burning bush experience, you know? And now, God wasn't punishing Benny for me as much as I'd like to believe it. But that's truly how I came to believe in a power greater than myself. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's it. That's my story, you know? So it's like, God's going to use this stuff, right? It's like I joined a home group because this girl was super hot. And so I joined this home group, and she moved away like a month later, you know, to Iowa. And then I'm stuck with these guys, you know? God is working in our lives. God has put us here in this moment at this time for a reason, whether you believe in it or not, you know, we're here for a purpose. And I didn't see it. I didn't understand it, but God, and I'm just telling and like looking back, you know, at the time, none of this stuff made any sense to me. And my sponsor, you know, he's so great. He's a big, tall guy, and that's, you know, strong. And he was the real deal. He was a rodeo dude, whatever that is. You know, I'm a city guy, right? I listen to rap. Don't know about no rodeo. Obviously, horses and me don't get along. But he was the real deal. And it was a good thing, too, because I was going to, like, murder him a number of times. And he would just get in my face, you know, and he'd say, thou shalt not hit thy sponsor, you know, and I'd break the ice a little bit. But there was one time when he was sharing, and we got a Thursday night meeting. It's like a 5-minute time limit, 4 or 5 minutes. Is how long you get to share. And I was like a year sober, maybe less. I was like 8 months sober, still in this pig farm treatment center place. And my sponsor talked for like 7 minutes, and I was timing him. And after the meeting, I'm like, hey, man, just policing things up here. You shared for like 7 minutes. You might want to wrap it up a little earlier next time. And he's like, come here, drool boy. You know, we need to talk, you know. He's like, how long have I been sober? I'm like, 9 years. How long have you been sober? 9 months. He goes, don't you think I know a little more about staying sober than you do? I'm like, yeah, but I can tell time, you know. And he goes, well, here's the thing, like, I don't care, how you feel about things, but if you don't start showing a little bit of respect to me as your sponsor, then it's not going to do you any good. You're not going to respect yourself or anybody else. And by the way, where do you live at, And I told him, I live at the Nugent's Ranch Treatment Pig Farm Center. He goes, yeah, how many roommates? I got like this little room and 4 of us live in it, And where were you at before that? You were homeless, weren't you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, so Andrew spends his whole life working hard, doing the best he can, managing everything, and that's where you end up. Like, that is the apex of your ability to manage your life. That is how well you've done. And now you're in a, that's you doing it, Nice job, How about we make a change? Does that sound like a plan, And he goes, here's what we're going to do. And I got it. Like, it was one of those times when you get slapped so hard in the face by the truth that you can't deny the fact that I don't know. So busy holding on to this idea that I have some control and that my decisions, are good, and they're not. Everything that I've done has gotten me to this point, and here I am thinking that I know better than everybody else, that I'm smarter than you in the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And at that point, I just got slapped with that huge dose of humility, And he said, save me a seat, get me coffee at the meetings. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right, And he goes, I don't care. I don't care. You don't respect yourself, me, anybody. And if you're going to start, sooner or later, you're going to have to start with one person. You're going to start with me. It's going to be the other old timers. Then it's going to be your buddies in AA. And eventually, maybe you'll start to respect yourself and your family as time goes on if you start taking some better actions. And so I started doing that, but I can only go so far. I remember one time I was sitting in the back of the room. I was a couple years sober. And he was sitting in the front, right where my Norwegian friend is sitting right here. And he stood up and turned around and looked back and pointed to the chair next to him like this, And I'm sitting in the back talking to my buddies. And I'm like, if I get up and walk up there and sit down next to him, I will be his bitch. You know what I mean? That's what I was thinking. Like, I'm crazy. But that's what I was thinking, And what happens is in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's these times in your life where there's this like crossroads, There's this fork in the road, right? And you're going to go right, you're going to be okay, you're going to do the right thing, it's going to be hard, it's going to be humbling, or you're going to go left and you're going to do the easy thing. You're going to let the ego take over and let the ego start making decisions again in your life, right? And that's what it boiled down to, I know better. By then, I was living the rap music, you know what I mean? By then, I'd done some things. And, I was not going to be anyone's bitch, you know what I mean? Like, my ego just came roaring back, like I was on the street all over again, But I somehow or another, I had a higher power in my life, and I got up and I walked that hard walk, that walk of shame, all the way to the front of the room, and I sat down, And all he was probably doing was just saying, oh, hey, man, there's an empty seat next to me. You know what I mean? But it changed my life. And that's how it works in AA. I have the 2 greatest kids in the world. Well, before I tell you about my kids, I'll tell you this. I was a year and a half sober. I was living with a prison guard. So how's that from 2 different walks of life? The prisoner and the guard living together, sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And one day my buddy Jay, the prison guard, comes home and hands me this piece of paper. And it just my heart just fell out of my chest. I looked at it because I don't know if I had swept it under the rug or just thought it was going to go away or what, but it was like felony, 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 warrant, 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 warrant. I was wanted in 4 states for the stuff that I had been doing as a year and a half later. And he goes, I just pulled your record and just checking you out, man. No big deal. But, hey, you might, think about this. And so a lot of fear came in, big time fear. Because at this point, I know a number of people who were downline of me that were doing like serious prison sentences for the stuff that we were doing at that time. Prison's not for me, I'm okay looking. I had a really nice ass at the time, and I was just like, I'm just going to be somebody's bitch in prison. You know what I mean? It was just going to be bad, and I was going to have to fight every day, and I hate prison food. It's disgusting. I just hate being sober, you know. But I knew I was going to have to go back to prison, and my sponsor said, get a lawyer. And I called that guy that was there the day the tiger bit me, because he was a lawyer at the time, and he wouldn't represent me because he's like, I'm not representing you, bro. I mean, we're buddies and all, but no. He gave me this other guy that was another football player, friend of ours, his dad. And this guy said, get a bunch of letters from everybody that you know, from everybody. And I did. I scoured the earth in Alaska, from my boss at the Holiday gas station that I worked at as the night shift attendant at the time, armor-alling the pumps for you good people. And from my other teacher at school, I was going to the community college at the time, from my other boss at the property management job that I had, just from people in AA, you know, people I barely knew sometimes. I'm like, hey, you see me come to this meeting, right? Will you write a letter to the judge saying I'm sober and I contribute in Alcoholics Anonymous? You know? And I'm like, I mean, I just inundated this lawyer with letters because that's what he told me to do, and he took it, and we went to court, and there was a hearing. Because, I mean, it's just you plead guilty, be willing to go to prison, right? Make your amends, do your time. You know, you made the mess, you got to clean it up, right? You got to be a man. Sooner or later, when you're in the broad highway of life in Alcoholics Anonymous, your past is going to catch up to you. If you don't deal with it, it's going to catch up to you. It will run you over if you don't get a hold of it and deal with it. And I was sitting there, and they were, you know, we were at the hearing, and the guy in front of me was me. He was the violent, meth-dealing piece of crap that ruined people's lives on a regular basis, and he hadn't changed a bit. And I don't remember what the sentence was, but it was not a good, one of those sentences where your jaw drops and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, they were coming down pretty hard at the time. And I was next, and he read this stuff, and I was 2 years sober at the time, and it was unbelievable. The judge dismissed my case. He threw it out of court. Like, all charges dropped, you know. And I can't tell you, like, why me, you know? It just doesn't make any sense. And I was like, I knew at that point in time that my purpose in life was to help God's kids, to help his alcoholic kids, you know. And that's what God wanted from me. He just wanted me to quit being a shithead all the time and just start being a guy that carried the message that he wanted me to carry to the people who are struggling, that were just like me in Alcoholics Anonymous on a regular basis. And it's such a simple life. And anybody that has, you know, any debilitating disease, and they're going to be, you know, diabetes, cancer, anything, it's like, look, just go to a few meetings a week, go work with an occasional guy that doesn't take a shower, wash, and you know, wants to talk to you really close up in your face, and read a book with him. Have him write some stuff down, share some personal stuff, you know, not a huge time commitment. Just go do that. They would jump all over that opportunity in a heartbeat. Done. But then you go tell an alcoholic who's also got a deadly illness, and he's like, oh, that seems like a lot, you know. I don't want to do that, you know. Just wait till he's, you know, pounded to death in the gutter looking at a, you know, long prison sentence and you know, whatever. And then it's like, okay, maybe I'll go to a couple meetings a week, you know, one meeting a week. You know, it's just, we're the worst. But I think that the best fifth step you're ever going to do is the one where you take one from a new guy, right? I mean, I did mine. I gave mine to my sponsor, and it was, you know, I felt like the loser that I was or whatever. But the AA changes when you take a fifth step from a new guy, you know. And I think 60, 70, 80% of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, in my opinion, which matters very little, is working with others. For me, it's everything. It's absolutely everything. Everything is, you know, if I'm not working with others, I'm thinking about myself. If I'm thinking about myself, I'm starting to get resentments. If I'm starting to get resentments, I don't have a relationship with a higher power. So the people that tell me the higher power is the most important thing are incorrect. Because if I'm not with you, I don't have a relationship with a higher power. That's the problem. I had to come to AA to get that relationship with a higher power. It is through the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous that I gain and maintain a relationship with a power greater than myself, and only through the relationship that I have with you guys in AA and working with others. Thanks for letting me share.